the reason there is so much... people have such a difficult time deciding why I've been successful for this long, or trying to quantify my talent, is because it's been so obvious from day one that I wanted to be a star, that people found it very hard to believe that I also wanted to be a musician.
Born Georgios Panayiotou in 1963, George Michael is the son of a successful Greek Cypriot restaurateur. He spent his early years in the middle-class comfort of North London suburbs. When he was 12, his parents moved to Hertfordshire, and George went to school in Bushey, where he was to meet his future Wham partner, Andrew Ridgeley.
I was introduced as a second-year student into Bushey Meads Comprehensive, and Andrew was appointed to take care of me. He was, in fact, the one to initiate the first group, because I had a very, even though I had a very strong will, I also knew that basically I was going to get thrown out of my very comfortable position at home if I didn't stick to the studying, and if I didn't at least pretend that I wanted to get some A-levels. So I did that. Andrew's real ambition when we met was to be either a footballer or a pop star. He knew he didn't want to go to university, and he wanted to start a band.
It's my first Top of the Pops, and it's their first Top of the Pops. Wham! Hey, circus!
In 1982, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley formed Wham, and went on to become the most successful pop duo of the decade.
Well, I haven't seen you face around town a while, so I greeted you with an annoying smile. When I saw that girl upon your arm, I knew she won your heart with a fatal charm. I said, soul boy, let's hit the town, hit boy, and what's with the frown? But in return, all you could say was, hi, George, meet my fiancée.
Well, I first saw them on Top of the Pops, so the potential I saw was instantly a television potential. And they projected themselves in a way which no other group from Top of the Pops I'd ever seen had done. Both as a group, in that they seemed to have understood how to use Top of the Pops to project themselves, and they came across with this incredible sort of erotic intimacy.
Call me good, call me bad, call me anything you want to, baby. But I know that you're sad, and I know I can make you happy with the one thing that you never had. Baby, I'm your man. Don't you know that, baby? I'm your man. You bet if you're gonna do it right.
When the two of you carved out Wham, did you feel you were going against the prevailing trend, or did you feel you were going with the trend that only you two knew about? Where were you directing yourselves then, or was it all a fluke?
I think that the only fluke was how early it happened. I think that we actually had a very strong sense of doing something different, which really didn't get appreciated at the time. I mean, there was such a strong tongue-in-cheek element to the first three singles, and we were hailed as being some kind of social, commentators, like spokesmen for our generation, i.e. that we'd been on the dole. Actually, I hadn't. I mean, Andrew had been on the dole for years, borrowing money off me.
DHSS, mannerism that they're giving is the very best.
Wham Rap and Young Guns were among the first white rap parodies to achieve British chart success. Both songs, released in 1982, celebrated the lifestyle of the young, unattached or unemployed male.
Well, folks will be a drag if work ain't your bag, and when you let them know you're more dead than alive in a 9 to 5, then they say you've got to go and get yourself a job or get out of this house. Get yourself a job, you a man or a mouse. A finger in each ear, you pretend not to hear. Gotta get some space, get out of this place.
We didn't see why everything had to be so down. So I suppose about the same time that groups like Haircut 100 were bringing pop back, we thought we'd make pop records with a little bit of black influence and throw in some humorous lyrics. But unfortunately, the humorous lyrics were taken by a lot of people very seriously and kind of shook up our own vision of what we were supposed to be doing. Because obviously when you're 18 years old and suddenly you're successful, you start to think, well, if that's what I'm successful for, if I'm supposedly supposed to be making these very, if I'm supposed to be representing my generation, then I'd better start doing something about it. And I think for a while we got a bit confused.
Pop groups often represent their period. Often later people say that they influenced the period, but pop groups really are a reflection of the period. So I think they're very much a part of their times. After all, the first song they did was Wham! Rap about being on the dole. It was totally unheard of at that time for well-educated middle-class kids to be on the dole. That was a completely new experience. And that was very largely a part of what made them successful, because here they were, all these other middle-class kids on the dole who'd been told it was impossible if you went to school and you had good family behind you to end up in this situation. They immediately connected with them. But then so did all the working-class kids, because they were also used to being on the dole. So they crossed all these class barriers just like that.
The only real important thing about Wham in terms of moving away from what was happening at the time was that most of the recent music had been very down in terms of youth.
With this slick Motown-influenced dance record, the rebelliousness of Wham's early rap records was abandoned. The leather jackets traded for an image of clean-cut, middle-class well-being.
I'm very typical kind of second-generation immigrant in that sense that if I got anything from my father's side, it was the presumption that you go on and you move up. I mean, I was definitely supposed to become an accountant or a lawyer. There was never any question that I was going to be anything other than a very upwardly mobile child.
What reaction did you have to the press associating you with the yuppie, Thatcher, enterprise image of the 80s? Did you feel that was unfair? Did you go along with it? How did you react to it?
Well, I don't really think that was something that was very temporary. I think I'm still very much a victim of timing in that sense. I mean, I understand totally why people line me up with Thatcher and line me up with the whole yuppie movement and everything. I find it insulting that people are that simplistic about what they think Thatcher means to people who've grown up in the last 10 years. I also find it very, very... I find it quite pathetic that people believe that someone who's come from being unsuccessful at my age to being very successful, when it's in a creative environment. I mean, this is probably one of the few industries, I can't think of any other industry other than the film industry, where someone of my age can move independently through a business, or not independently, but basically be their own boss, because they have the raw material. Someone can move through the business to a powerful position, but not necessarily have had to make terrible moral compromises or walk on people or do very monetary things.
We had the situation in a Thatcherite England where it was suddenly very respectable to be prosperous, and all through the 70s, credibility was based on not wanting to make money but actually wanting to make very serious records. Suddenly, credibility was that you were aiming to make money and to succeed financially. And that was a nerve they touched on. I think all the other people who were fed up with not achieving suddenly decided they wanted to achieve in a financial way, and Wham identified that for them.
Wham, I thought, was very pure in its conception of two young guys who were, to some degree, hedonistic and escapist. But I suppose the outward appearance was very Thatcherist.
The imagery and the sense of what Wham was came entirely from Andrew. And George, when he was younger, wasn't pleased with the way he looked and was, and had copied Andrew. And eventually he became a pretty good lookalike, so that, contrary to what most people say, that Andrew had no part in Wham, it's totally the opposite. Wham was Andrew. It wasn't even Andrew and George, it was Andrew and Andrew, the real Andrew and the fake one. So it was difficult to identify then what their respective roles were in the songwriting, but they were totally essential to the projection and recording of them. But as time went on, I think George, partly because he really did feel that the group wasn't him, he put more and more effort into the songwriting and production and began to take it away from Andrew. And Andrew was reasonably indifferent to that and was an easygoing person, so he let George do it.
The funny part about all the speculation about my input and Andrew's input is that between the two of us, we got it all sorted out very, very early. And basically, in terms of the songwriting, Andrew said, off you go, you know. He said, you know, I want us to be the biggest group in the world, and I think the way to do it is to let you go with it. It wasn't that Andrew didn't believe he could contribute anything. I think he just saw that I had to be kind of let off the rein.
Somebody told me, or everything she wants is everything she sees. I guess I must have loved you, because I said you were the perfect girl for me.
So when it came to things like Everything She Wants, I'd reached a kind of dilemma. At the same time that Wham decided that they were going to rush off to Ibiza and make videos and get brown, I had decided that I was going to write without any kind of restraints in terms of the band. So I thought, what do I want to do? Do I want to write in a much more personal sense and throw off the band image, or do I want to go with the band image and write for the band? And I didn't think that either of those were necessary. I believed that I could do both and have to live with the results for a while and then make up for it later, which was basically the plan. So it was a big decision to make. And at times I was thinking, I'm never going to get out of this. I'm never going to be seen as a writer. I'm never going to get my credibility back. But I just kept going.
In a lot of your answers, you are obviously very careful and considered about your career.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you have been in charge of it for quite a while now?
I think I've been in charge of it probably from about 4 weeks after I got my record contract. I mean, I had this vision as a child of the rock and roll business, and I was once. I remember sitting in the office, or it was like makeshift office of our first record company director, whose name was Mark Dean. And I remember being so, I was almost like kissing the ground where you walked, and I was just so pleased that I'd got this break, and I knew I was actually officially going to be able to go home to Mum and Dad and say, I'm going to get a record contract. And it was like overwhelming for me that I just thought for about 3 or 4 weeks I would go into meetings and sit and talk to people and make it totally clear to them I was perfectly prepared to do anything they wanted. I would do whatever they wanted if they could make me a pop star, right? And it lasted for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then I realised that people didn't know how to do it. They literally didn't have a clue how to do it. And the realisation was just it was such a shock that I think my immediate reaction was, right, if they don't know how to do it, I'm not going to do anything they want me to do, and I'm going to lay it out exactly as I see it.
There's a paradox here, though, isn't there? Because getting control of your career and getting a grip at it and organising things has liberated you to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it's brought you the accusation of being very calculating. So how do you cope with that?
One of the more interesting aspects of being accused, well, I don't think it's such an accusation. I think calculation can be, calculation is just another way of saying in some instances that someone's thought something out. I mean, I can understand people's criticisms of my presentation or I cringe at some of the things I've done as not as an artist, as a performer. But I can see that. I don't turn around and cringe really at anything that I've written. I can see that some things are worse than others, but I don't look at anything and say, he did that to get from here to there. You know, whereas people don't seem to believe that's the case. I think my progression has been natural, and it's a writer's progression. Other people just see it as part of this big, you know, ascendant career.
George Michael's first step towards a solo career came in 1984 with the release of Careless Whisper. The song, written in 1981 when he was just 17, pushed him into the spotlight as a solo performer, although at the time he was still part of Wham.
I feel so unsure as I take your hand and lead you to the dance floor. As the music dies, something in your eyes calls to mind a silver screen, and all is said goodbyes. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm, though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. I should have known better to cheat a friend, waste the chance that I've been given. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I danced with you.
Probably the most memorable thing that I've ever written would be the saxophone break in Careless Whisper. That's what people would point at me and say, all right, well, you know, this is his moment, which is a bit scary considering it's like 9 years ago. To me, it's a very precocious piece of work that was drawing in lots of different influences, and it seems to have come together. I mean, it doesn't sound like a song that was written by a 17-year-old, but I don't understand why not, because I didn't know anything about life then. I certainly didn't know anything very serious about romance.
Can we do something, it's just in the monitors, just soften them a little bit, the brightness. And also a repeat or a plate, something that's just going to soften it. It's just hitting me really hard up here.
One of the main attractions of a song written by someone else is that there is nothing personal about it.
And calling. It's not long enough plate. It's not carrying it. You know your last phrase, the 4-bar phrase, and I'll just sing a desert road from Vegas to nowhere. Let's see what it sounds like. Vegas to nowhere. Yeah, just like that. So what I'll do, I'll sing the whole 2-verse section where I sing the hot, dry wind bit and those 2 verses, and then I'll do one, I'm calling you, and then you come in again with the solo, and then finish it with those 2 lines.
There is some kind of release for me in the middle of a performance to actually stop singing me and just saying, right, this is an instrument and this is me using it to the best of my ability.
Let me warm up, man. Is that the key? A desert road from Vegas to nowhere. Someplace better than where you've been. A coffee machine that needs some fixing. In a little cafe just around the bend. Can't you hear me?
range is something that, again, is a very important consideration. That's a very strong reason for me doing so many Stevie Wonder covers. I've done, over various sets, I've done like 4 or 5 Stevie Wonder covers, and apart from the fact that I consider him to be an incredible writer, his voice, the key that he was writing, and also over a certain time period, because now he tends to write in a much higher key, but the key he was writing for at that time is perfectly suited to my voice. And somehow I managed to really get something out of his songs live.
So did we work out what that happens to the bass there? Yes. When it goes into tell me who I am. It just goes. Last time goes. Shame to anyone's life, living future paradise. It goes straight into it. It's shame to anyone's life, living in the future paradise. Without the bass, right? Just because I want to keep it light, and then we can see what we can put in on the bass. Because a full bass line is going to be... I think an ordinary bass is going to be too heavy on this, don't you?
Yeah.
Because that's what it needs, is a really light synth bass line.
Yeah.
And do, all that stuff, you know? That would be the cleverest idea, wouldn't it? Do you want to have a go then?
Oh.
Been spending most their lives living in pastime paradise. Been spending most their lives living in pastime paradise. Been wasting most their time glorifying days long gone behind.
There's an interview with Julie Burchill in which you said, "I'm not what stars are made of. I'm not Prince. I'm not Madonna." What were you saying about yourself there?
I think what I was probably saying at the time, although I didn't understand it at the time, was that in the real sense, the real stars, I think, the real stars that have come out of media in the last 50 or 60 years, if you think of huge stars, they're almost always like racked with insecurity. I mean, I would say I have my insecurity the same as everybody else, and I think that success over a number of years has kind of ironed out a lot of them. But I never wanted to be someone else. I wanted to be a star, and I wanted people to love me, you know, and recognize me in the street. As a child, that was what I wanted, but I never really wanted to be someone else. And I think the people that are the most vivid and colourful, fascinating stars are always people who basically want to be someone else. I believe that of Madonna. I believe that of Prince. I believe that of Michael Jackson. I'm not saying this is a terrible flaw, and it actually makes them very, very interesting people, but I've never seen myself in that light. All I knew at the time, I don't think I really understood it when I was speaking to Julie Burchill, but all I knew at the time was that I just didn't see myself as someone living 24 hours a day as a star.
In 1986, Wham! Ended. A year later, George Michael released his solo album, Faith, which included the controversial song and video, I Want Your Sex.
I want your sex. I want your love. I want your sex. I want your sex.
The point I was trying to make was that the most attractive form of sex that you can promote is the idea of being totally in love with someone but also wanting to rip their clothes off. It really wasn't anything like as throwaway or as irresponsible as people try to make it out to be. I mean, to the extent that the word monogamy appeared in the video.
Sex is natural, sex is good. Not everybody does it, but everybody should. Sex is natural, sex is fun. Sex is best when it's one-on-one.
It was just huge in America. It basically launched my career with such a bang, no pun intended, launched my career with such a bang that I mean, I couldn't have wished for anything better to happen in the sense that my career needed to go somewhere, I needed to do an about turn.
In May 1988, Faith became the first album by a white solo artist to reach the top of the Billboard Black Album chart.
Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body.
To say that you're number one on the top of the Billboard Black chart is to say that you are not an impersonator. Because, I mean, I knew that I'd been accused of being just an impersonator for so long. And to get yourself to that position, there has to be plenty of black kids and adults in America that genuinely see you as a soul singer. Now, to me, that does not mean that you sound like a black singer or that you are a soul artist, because I don't think that has got anything to do with why I sold those records. I think it's to do with singing something and putting songs into a black context in terms of the backing tracks, and what you sing over the top of them has to be for real.
And teacher, there are things that I still have to learn. But the one thing I have is my pride.
And the winner is George Michael.
Further recognition came when George Michael won in 3 categories at the American Music Industry Awards. However, 2 of these awards proved highly controversial, since they'd traditionally gone to black artists.
For an uptown boy who just
I beat Michael Jackson and Bobby Brown and a couple of other people in different categories, and I totally agree with the criticism that as they are public awards, a lot of white people are going to vote for a white guy before they're going to vote for a black guy.
The black male artist works very hard to get his due in that area, to say, you're the best. So when you have an outsider to come into that has all of these other opportunities, it'd be something different if Bobby Brown had across-the-board play and he could compete in the same category as George Michael competes in. That would be a whole nother thing. But to get to be pop male vocalist of the year, he's just not going to be considered.
There is as much daylight set between Gladys Knight and George and Bobby Brown, who is black and makes pop records, as there is between Gladys Knight and George Michael, who is white and makes pop records. Now, they're all working vaguely within an R&B idiom, but Gladys Knight is what someone of my age calls a soul singer, in that her chief tool is her voice and what she can say with that metaphysically and all of that stuff. Which is not what Bobby Brown's about. Bobby Brown and George are about making cracking dance records with good tunes that you can whistle on the radio. Now, that seems to me absurd, that both Gladys Knight, George and Bobby Brown should all be included in the same catch-all phrase. That's where the problem lies.
everybody in the house make some noise!
Gladys Knight was not a lone dissenting voice. Other black artists, such as Spike Lee and Dionne Warwick, publicly criticized the awards for racial bias. Further criticism came from Public Enemy, a successful and politically militant rap group.
We believe that black people are first world people. Not third world, because I don't know where third world came from.
I didn't ask to be given those awards, right? I'm not going to pretend I wasn't happy to get them, but I find it very. I do understand. I understand the attitude which says, or the argument that says, that this is just. This guy is just an acceptable version of black music for white America.
That's been a criticism for a long time, hasn't it?
White guys come along and
Absolutely.
plunder
I mean,
the
it
black
goes all the way
music.
back to Elvis, doesn't
That's
it? Obviously. But I think that at the end of the day, I'm very pleased that a lot of black people appreciate my music, and I know that they do. I know that that winning those awards or getting those kind of chart positions are also very largely attributable to black people that do like my music, that buy my music, or that like me as a vocalist. And that means that somehow I'm doing something right as a vocalist. I don't think I sound black. I've never thought I sounded black. I don't think that that there is any. I don't think there's any attempt to kind of steal black heritage in what I'm doing. All I think that's happening is I'm trying to make good music.
Don't you delay, don't you delay, don't you delay. Send yours right away. Send yours right away. Hate's going round, bringing many home.
I can understand, for instance, people who have a very strong objection to me being quoted as a soul singer or being on top of the black charts. I understand their point, but I actually think that white and black people making similar music and crossing over that way can't be anything but a good thing.
With an endless desire, I kept on searching. Sure, in time my eyes would meet. Like the bridge is on fire, the heart is over. One touch and set me free. No, I don't regret a single moment. No, I don't. I know you don't. Looking back, when I think of all those disappointments, I just laugh. I know you did. I just laugh when the river was deep.
George Michael's success as a solo performer has enabled him to work with some of the black artists he's always admired. From his earliest days, he's been influenced by and borrowed from the best of black American music.
Wham, when they first appeared, white English suburban rap group. That's what they were important for. They were the first good white rap group. Then they turned into a neat little R&B pop group. When you think of Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, it's all about early Motown, Smokey Robinson, buzzword go-go. You think of Smokey in a mohair suit in the Apollo in Harlem in 1962. He's always covered Stevie Wonder songs. He's been endorsed by Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, the works, and he's become, it would be wrong to say he's become a surrogate R&B artist, but George is all about R&B. In fact, I think he's probably the best white R&B performer I can think of.
The valley was low, it didn't stop me. No, no, I knew you were waiting. I knew you were waiting for me. I still believe. It didn't stop me. No, no, knew you were waiting. Knew you were waiting for me.
I've associated black music with sexuality and expression and tried to really pull those things out of myself by throwing myself into that genre. And I find that as I back off of that sexual projection, which I do find I have started to do, that I find it less necessary to place myself with black music, because after all, I grew up listening very much to a mixture of black and white music. I mean, I loved Elton John, I loved other white artists in the 70s, and it was only really in the later half of my teens that I really got influenced by black music. So it's almost like now I choose to use black music specifically or to draw from black influences specifically when that is what I want to express.
While recording in studios in West London, George Michael explained the musical ideas behind one of the tracks.
This particular song, which is called Waiting for That Day, wasn't the normal writing process because I had the idea for the mood as opposed to a song. I was with some friends and I was complaining about the fact that something like 5 or 6 of the records in the top 30 at a particular time were based around a sample of a drum track, which was the intro to a James Brown song called Funky Drummer, which has now become like the most well-used drum track of all time, I would imagine. And I had this idea of taking something, or taking that particular drum track and placing something completely different, something completely out of context over the top of it. The drum track is this. Hopefully it should come up now. Come on. And that is actually the sample of the James Brown record, but it's slowed down. It's been slowed down for a number of other records. And then I thought I'd put something completely folk over the top of it. We've got some backing vocals there, but this is the guitar line. Which obviously is about as unblack as you can get. And then mix the two. Add a little bit of bass. So I started writing around that, and then just playing about with a keyboard. I just found the two chords that went with those guitar chords, but the sound itself made me think that maybe I should take the song in a slightly different direction, because the sound was this sound. Which is a very, very 60s, it's like Procol Harum or something like that. Very, very 60s sound. And when you combine these two things, get an altogether different feel. So I actually left the guitars reasonably low down in the mix. So then I basically had to write something that fit that feel, and I mean this is the first track on this particular album anywhere. I've found the feel before I had any idea what I was going to write over the top, and I tried all kinds of things, and at the end of the day, I decided to go for something really, really white sounding, influence-wise, just to kind of offset that very, very overused black rhythm.
Now everybody's talking about this new decade. Like you say the magic numbers, then just say goodbye to the stupid mistakes you made. Oh, my memory serves me far too well. Don't you know that the years will come and go? Some of us will change our lives, some of us still have nothing to show. Nothing, baby, nothing but memories. And if these wounds, they are self-inflicted, I don't really know how my poor heart could have protected me. But if I have to carry this pain, if you will not share the blame, I deserve to see your face again.
What is it that appeals to you about being a writer, and why do you want to be a writer so much more than anything else?
I think it's because I believe I am a writer much more than I am anything else. Definitely for the first album, I didn't even believe that I would ever make a decent singer, although I had belief as a writer then. The second album, I started to believe in myself as a singer, and I think it showed because the two albums sounded very different vocally. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I do. I don't believe that I am important as a pop star. I don't think that there are many people that are important as pop stars in the sense that they used to be. I don't believe that I will leave a great mark as an entity, you know. I think I'm more realistic than that. I do believe now that I'm a lot better singer than I ever thought I would be. But at the end of the day, I want to leave something as a writer. And I think to have a passion or to have something that drives you on through life in a creative sense, most of us want to leave something, want to have something that will be remembered without, you know, without people really having to search in their memory. And I want to leave songs. I believe I can leave songs that will mean something to other generations.
In Praying for Time, George Michael deals with the theme of an uncaring world, a subject far removed from anything he's written before.
There comes a point where you have to write something which you have not written before, and which your interest in any particular topic or subject will inspire you, and that's why I suppose eventually most lyricists do approach wider topics than sex and love, you know. These are the days of the open hand. They will not be the last. Look around now. These are the days of the beggars and the choosers. The open hand, to me, represents the vast numbers of people who, and specifically in this country, vast numbers of people who are actually on the poverty line or below the poverty line, which is something that's going to go on. And I like the idea of beggars and the choosers because you take a phrase. What's the phrase, you know, beggars can't be choosers, and you completely change it. In other words, the beggars and the choosers and nothing in between, which was really my point, because it does seem to be not that much in between these days. This is the year of the hungry man whose place is in the past, hand in hand with ignorance and legitimate excuses. That verse is really about the fact that the hungry men of today are completely, I mean, there is a full knowledge of them. People know what's going on, in this country and abroad, and the legitimate excuse of yesterday was that ignorance, and that's gone, obviously. So, in other words, the hungry man today is a well-known fact. I guess somewhere along the way he must have let us all out to play, turned his back, and all God's children crept out the back door. I've always liked the term somehow, God's children. Somehow as though we were that innocent in a way, and the idea being that we ran out on God in a sense, you know, crept out the back door, and because of that we're left to make our own decisions. We'll take our chances because God stopped keeping score, is like saying there's no one here to you know, pull back the reins, so we have to make our own decisions.
These are the days of the open hand. They will not be the last. Look around now. These are the days of the beggars and the choosers. This is the year of the hungry man, whose place is in the past. Hand in hand with ignorance and legitimate excuses. The rich declare themselves poor, and most of us are not sure if we have too much, but we'll take our chances, 'cause God stopped keeping score. I guess somewhere along the way he must have let us all out to play, turned his back, and all God's children crept out the back door, and it's hard to love.
George Michael's career has for many years been seen in terms of image rather than content. His early desire to be a star has run parallel with his ambitions as a songwriter.
I have two very, very strong memories of my childhood. I remember being on a bus, and I I was basically bunking off school, and I was terribly depressed at school. I can't remember what about, but I remember I was just riding around on buses all day thinking that I'd get caught if I was out somewhere and someone would spot me, and that the safest place to be was on a bus. And I remember thinking to myself, one day, no one will be able to touch you. You'll somehow get away from everyone else in some respect. And the other thought was when I was about 14 years old, I remember I was washing up in my father's restaurant, and I was listening to something. It was on a tape machine in the restaurant itself, and it occurred to me that some melody shouldn't have gone that way. It should have gone another way. And it suddenly occurred to me that I would have written it that other way. That was the first moment that I ever remember thinking I could write that, but better. And somehow those two things, I somehow think I got those two things. They kind of, I've spent the last 10 years of my life really confusing those two things. I've confused the fact that I thought I had that ability as a writer, that I could do something special as a writer, with that need to be special in some way. And I don't feel that need to be a star anymore. I don't feel that need to prove anything that I'm some kind of different kind of person, which leaves me open to pursue the second thought, which is that I would actually like to leave something special behind me, which has nothing really to do with me as a person being in any way different, just that my ability is as a songwriter. It's my songs that I think I can concentrate on now.
These are the days of the empty hand. Oh, you hold on to what you can. And charity is the coat you wear twice a year. This is the year of the guilty man. Your television takes a stand, and you find that what was over there is over here. So you scream from behind your door. Say what's mine is mine and not yours. I may have too much, but I'll take my chances, 'cause God stopped keeping score. And you cling to the things they sold you. Did you cover your eyes when they told you that he can't come back, 'cause he has no children to come back for? It's hard to love. There's so much